part 3 of this Sheikh Imran Hosein interview, and we're about to find out who Gog and Magog are.
In the prophecy of Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, connected to Gog and Magog, he said that Gog and Magog will be destroyed by Allah in Jerusalem.
And you've written quite extensively about that.
He said that Gog and Magog will be destroyed by Allah in Jerusalem. The word Jerusalem is not to be found in the Quran and the Hadith because it's in Arabic, and the Arabic language does not have Jerusalem. The Arabic language has Baytul Maqdis or Al-Quds, but some people don't know that. So leave them in their ignorance. I'm tired of them, really. I'm tired of them. I don't know why do I have to devote time, precious time, in answering people who have no capacity to think. I'm wasting my time. So if the town is Jerusalem, the people would be the Jews. And then it was the Jews who were expelled from Jerusalem, and then Allah placed a ban on them. They could never return to Jerusalem for 2,000 years. And then came a modern Western civilization, of which the Dutch were a particularly nasty part. I don't know what they are today, but at that time they were a nasty part. Britain was sophisticated in its nastiness, but the Dutch were brutal in their nastiness. And that's why Indonesia today is still Indonesia, while Malaysia is half British and half in Malay, not Indonesia, because the British came to Malaysia and the Dutch went to Indonesia. Yes, so when modern Western civilization took control of power in the world, and this happened only once in history, and it is not going to come back. Trump cannot bring it back. No, Western civilization took control of the power in the world, and then they brought the Jews back to Jerusalem to reclaim it as their own, as a consequence of which Gog and Magog are located in modern Western civilization. They are those who control power in the modern West. My critics can shout from the mountaintops, the Table Mountains, as much as they want. This is the truth, and the truth will prevail.
And of course, they can extend to a whole host of other issues, such as the fiat system, the money system, the corruption that you speak of in different forms and shapes that does exist. And Allah, of course, commanding us to resist and fight that corruption where it may well be. I want to then, almost in hindsight, and ask this with a heavy heart, actually. Is October the 7th? Of course, the occupation did not start then. The threats did not start then. The history does not start on October the 7th. But is what has been the genocide in Gaza, is that fulfilling what is a scripture that's been predestined beyond our understanding?
Our Prophet, Allah's blessing be upon him, prophesied that in the end time there will be great liars and therefore great deception. So beware. People who can't see beyond their nose cannot recognize deception and would be deceived. And unfortunately, that's the majority of us today. Israel is advancing with her agenda successfully, while we are asleep, looking, not being able to look beyond our noses, okay?
By 2013, Hezbollah then enters Syria, and we have successive years of war being fought there. A little bit spills over into Iraq and so on. And we see coming onto the scene are these groupings that are then funded by the Americans, supported by the Israelis, as well as the Turks, are playing a significant role there. Turkey, of course, a member of NATO, but also has its own nationalistic interests with the Kurds and so on. You've always maintained that these guys are not freedom fighters. They of course make takfir and they declare people apostates and so on, and they do the most vile things at the time since 2011. More than a decade later, we see things fall in the way that they did and how quickly Syria fell. And there seems to be, again, a point of contention about who the current people in power happens to be in Syria at the moment, Julani and so on. Julani, of course, coming from Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and before then it was Jabhat al-Nusra, and before then it was ISIS, as it were. He says they reformed. They're calling to be removed from a terror list that of course is being hosted by the United States, and now appear to be setting up this new Syrian modern state that's going to be free of any sort of extremist ideology, as it were. Let's deal with the Syria situation and who's in control at the moment, because being in opposition to that seems to suggest that you're fine with an Assad government who has had, together with his father, had a very negative, let's call it reputation, in the massacres and things that have happened, the Baath massacre and so on. So what is your sense about the complexity that Syria represents and who's in charge at the moment?
I would be a fool to defend an oppressor. I have always condemned oppression. And if Assad was an oppressor, he must be condemned as an oppressor. Okay? I was not aware of what is now being peddled in the public about the prisons in Syria. But let me tell my Syrian, my critics, that every single government around the world today have that kind of baggage. They're committing oppression around the world, in the prisons and so on. All over the world, probably Syria, Saudi Arabia, most of all. But they bark and they bark and they bark about Assad, and they want to accuse me now of being silent when they are silent about all the rest. So what's new? I am not defending an oppressor, not at all. But if Assad was resisting Israel, and they say no, Assad was not resisting Israel because they have nothing in their head but peanuts. If Assad was resisting Israel, then that was the right thing to do. Who have taken over from Assad? Are they resisting Israel, or did they take Israel's weapons and drones and so on to fight the war? When they were being injured in battle, did they not go to Israel and they were being treated in Israeli hospitals? Did Netanyahu not come to visit them? These Israeli puppy dogs who now control Syria were in hospitals in Israel, and Netanyahu went to visit them in the hospitals. So tell me, was it better to be under Assad resisting Israel, or to be now under the control of Israel's puppy dogs? And Syria is no longer in resistance of Israel. Syria is like Saudi Arabia, in a state of servile submission. So don't come at me with all of this nonsense, diverting the subject about Assad's oppression. Because I condemn all oppression. Let's do that and stop that discussion and come here, which is a major discussion. And when we come here, we find that now all that remains after Syria is that Iran is resisting Israel and Yemen is resisting Israel.